Hello colleagues, welcome to another Universities UK HEFCE Innovation and Growth webcast. My name is Greg Wade, I'm the Policy Leader on Innovation and Growth at Universities UK. I'm joined by Kevin. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Kevin Richardson, Higher Education Funding Council for England.
Excellent, thank you. The topic of this webcast is a general update on where we are with European structural and investment funds. So without further ado, do you want to kick off with a brief update on where we are at the national level?
At the national level, I think it's a really important time actually, Greg. In two different levels, both at that national level but also at the local level. We'll pick up that in a few minutes' time. Mm-hmm. At a national level, though, of course, just before the summer break, the government sent off its initial proposals for the Partnership Agreement and the draft European Social Fund Programme and the Regional Development Fund Programme. I think we're at the stage now where, after that, the traditional break like the European Commission tends to take during the summer months, the departments have been busy in effect with informal negotiations on the partnership agreement. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that reaching a consensus towards that, and the formal adoption isn't likely to happen imminently, and one would hope shortly thereafter the partnership agreement would be formally signed off. As if you watch the information coming out of Brussels at the moment, just about every other day there's a partnership agreement being signed off by different member states. Yeah. And many of those have been approved in the past few weeks. You also expect imminently from the Commission its formal observations in response to the European Social Fund Programme and the ERDF Programme. And those formal comments as a result of what is called an inter-service consultation within the European Commission, i.e. all of the different departments within Brussels contribute that. That's then collated and then sent back. But of course, over the recent weeks, the Commission and the government departments have been, discussing on an informal basis what's likely to be in those formal comments. So I'm not expecting any big surprises, to be honest.
No. And the drafts have been sort of well circulated and been available to universities to comment on and see as well.
Yeah, they have. The drafts have been on the government website for a while now, and indeed we've been promoting those through, as you know, Greg, on the LinkedIn group which the UK manage, and I think they are widely available and read. Yeah. And I would certainly urge universities, if they haven't done so now, to they should be inspecting in detail the contents of those drafts. Albeit, of course, that they may or are likely to change somewhat when we get to the final version. But I think, in the large part, one or two bits may change. There's enough in there now as to form the basis upon which to plan, I think.
Yeah. And I'd also add that the time and effort we've both invested in all the discussions about the planning leading up to the partnership agreement, the drafting of it, have laid quite a strong foundation for university engagement.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's important to recognise that the structure of the programmes now is very different this time around compared to previous times, and that the partnership agreement in effect sets the heads of terms, the policy direction, the strategic objectives. The operational programmes then are actually quite different to previous ones, where they're largely about perhaps providing a bit more of the detailed justification, much more information about what kinds of stuff you can get funding for, and importantly, the output indicators which need to be paid for and delivered, with more of the details. So that some people have said to me that operational programmes don't feel like they did in the past. And yeah, that's right. They're intended to be different. They're intended to be shorter and more succinct. And actually, I think they are actually well structured and written in a very clear and accessible manner, perhaps unlike some in the past.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So that's what's happening nationally. Who knows when the formal agreements will be? It obviously depends upon the negotiations on any potentially remaining tricky points. And whilst I don't expect there'll be many of those, there'll certainly be one or two. They may be resolved quite quickly or may take a period of time. But certainly I would say towards them, at least before the back end of this year, I'm pretty confident that the departments, and certainly the people that speak in the departments, I think they're hopeful of a sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah, and it's not as if the sort of planning is standing still and waiting for the partnership agreements to be agreed and finalised, because I think most LEPs and others are working on the basis that pretty much most of what's in the draft will pretty much be agreed.
Yeah, I think, okay, there may be some changes, but there's enough, and we know enough now to form the basis of the substantive planning at that local level. And I think it's important that universities and other partners recognise that even if there is a delay in the formal negotiations, work at the local level really does need to be proceeding.
Yeah.
And because what we want to do, of course, is as the final, the ink and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, we are ready to go with good quality projects which have been worked up in sufficient detail to get it as early a start as possible. Yeah. So, what I'm trying to say, I think, put to one side the negotiation in Brussels. Yes, it's important, but equally as important is get on with it at the local level and work with your partners to frame up what it is you want to do and how do you want to do it. Yeah. I think that's really important. So, Greg, I wonder perhaps if you could identify what you're doing as UUK in terms of keeping your membership up to date on what's happening at the national level.
Yeah, certainly, Kevin. Well, as you know, we've got a nominee on the National Growth Programme Board, Professor Julian Crampton, the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Brighton. And we also observe the meetings of the National Growth Programme Board. So we are making sure that we circulate all the unreserved papers to our LinkedIn network, which gets the information and the detail of the papers into universities really quickly. And we're also providing updates to members on the meetings themselves.
So shortly thereafter?
Yeah, pretty much the day after the meeting, so they can get a flavour of what the key issues have
so
been.
They don't need to wait for the formal minutes to be approved at the next meeting and all that bureaucracy?
No, absolutely. And we try and keep it short and succinct.
Yeah, that's good.
We also have a number of working groups that you've worked with us on, pulling in colleagues from the sector to share expertise and provide updates. We've held a number of those around the country, and we're going to hold a couple more in December, aren't we?
Yeah, and the details are in the LinkedIn group, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So we also provide updates and briefings to our full membership through our briefing processes and our Chief Executive's news, etc. So as well as communicating to the LinkedIn group, we do communicate when necessary to our full membership.
Okay, that's great. And I understand that underneath the National Growth Board there's going to be a number of different committees. I wonder perhaps if you could tell colleagues about those.
Yeah, certainly. They're going to set up a number of national subcommittees of the Growth Programme Board, and they're going to be two types. There are going to be a range of policy-focused committees, such as smart specialisation, and there'll be a number of performance-related subcommittees, such as evaluation. And our role, as we are officially a nominee of a member to the National Growth Programme Board, we can also nominate members to the thematic subcommittees.
Okay, so there's going to be more opportunities for universities to actually play a role at the national level.
Absolutely. I mean, we will send out a call soon to members seeking interested people with the expertise who can contribute to all of the subcommittees.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges for us is, there are numerous challenges, and this links to the HEFCE committees that we'll talk about in a minute, is that we will need to ensure that there's effective communication between all of our nominees and the rest of the sector, because as a nominating body we have a responsibility to make sure that the people who are on the National Growth Programme Board and its subcommittees are effectively linking to and representing the whole of the sector.
Yeah, because as I understand it, and I think many universities will be aware that at the local enterprise partnership area level there will also be a local subcommittee of the national committee, and that local subcommittee will broadly have a similar kind of membership structure to the National Growth Board committee, and as I think at the national level they've agreed broadly who should sit on those committees. It won't be fixed at each level, but for instance, I think I remember seeing a document which went to the Growth Board which said I think there's a strong expectation that each of these local ESIF committees there will be at least one university or representative higher education, and that's something we'll be looking at very strongly, I would have thought, as a sector.
Yeah, I think that's extremely positive. Yeah. I think the challenge is to get universities to engage. Yeah. Can you give us a more of a flavour of what these committees might be doing?
Yeah, I think that's important actually. That There will be, once the programmes are formally agreed, a formal subcommittee of the National Growth Board, which will act as what other people used to call programme monitoring committees. And they will work very closely with the managing authority in agreeing what's called an annual implementation plan, and that will set out two things: the process by which that local partnership will engage with the local partners to bring activities forward, operations forward, but also the timing of the calls and the type of calls. And some of those may be traditional open bidding calls, some of them may be a more strategic commissioning approach, and those calls may set out like the way in which they want different partners in different sectors to work together, perhaps a bit more. And those committees will also identify, in partnership with the managing authority, when those proposals come in, the extent to which they provide a strategic fit and they are close. The detailed technical appraisal will be done by the managing authority, who will then make comments and observations and recommendations to the local ESIF committee, who will then, in effect, request the managing authority to do the formal full appraisal, and then the final offer letter will go out. So it is a balancing act. In many respects, it's not too different to the way we've done it in previous regional programmes, where underneath the Programme Monitoring Committee, we tended to have a partnership committee which worked on that basis. The actual details of the business processes, an outlined flowchart, is on the LinkedIn group at the moment, so if anyone's interested in that. And the government has asked the local enterprise partnerships to take a lead in bringing those committees forward, and we know many of them now are getting on with that work. Some have met in shadow form 2-3 times already. Some are about to meet for the first time. And we'd certainly be keen to know, and as you said, Greg, how best does the sector identify where the benefits of communications across the different partnership areas, both horizontally and vertically to the centre. And that's something I think you'll be busy with in the coming weeks.
Yes, we will. And there's also the additional sort of challenge or expectation that in LEPs that have more than one university, the one HE rep should link with all the other universities in that area.
And I think that's really important, actually, to get that communication mechanism in place from the very beginning, so there's a clear understanding in that partnership area of how exactly will we share and represent our views. I think that's absolutely critical. One thing to mention is that there is we haven't talked about the LEP boards here. The regulations require this wider partnership body to be part of that process. And it will involve a range of partners which aren't necessarily represented ordinarily on LEP boards. And I think that perhaps we need a bit teasing out about the relationship between the two, but the regulations I think are pretty clear. And I do know the managing authority at a recent national committee was very clear to the members in that it expects that strategic advice and guidance and the identification of priority programmes and operations is a responsibility of that committee and not the LEP board. Again, that's not too dissimilar to the kind of structure we had in place when we had regional development agencies who provided a lot of the match funding and the local European committee. So it's not different, but it'll be teasing out. It'll take a while to settle down.
I mean, certainly as Universities UK, we will be looking to bring together the 39 HE reps on the LEP subcommittees, and also looking at how we can effectively support them and support them linking into the work of the thematic subcommittees in the National Growth Programme Board. And there's also the potential to link that information and advice to colleagues such as HEFCE regional consultants as well.
Exactly.
So that's what we'll be looking to do over the next couple of weeks.
I look forward to seeing that coming on stream, actually, Greg. It'll be really powerful.
Just while we're still on the governance of it, have you got advice where universities might be encountering problems in relation to getting involved in the subcommittees?
To be honest, I think those problems will be few and far between, which is positive. I've seen across the country, we're seeing active engagement now where a strong expectation that in that most, if all of these HEFCE committees will have a university representative. But if there are problems, I think the first thing to do is speak to the person within the executive team who has the job of actually bringing this committee live and just resolve it informally.
Yeah, that's always the best advice. Yeah,
of course it is. You know, and if there are ongoing issues, and if there isn't a consensus within the sector on who should represent the sector on that particular committee, you know, try and sort it out informally amongst yourselves. If not, you know, speak to your local CLG or BIS team for some advice on what the expectation is. And I think in most cases that should resolve things. But, you know, if there's still problems which aren't resolved, you know, get on the phone to yourselves at UUK, you know, raise it nationally. Don't be afraid, you know, if there isn't a genuine consensus at the local level, you know, to seek to resolve it.
Yeah.
You know, you're not on your own out there, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what UK's here for.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I think that covers pretty much everything on governance. I guess my final question would be, you know, we've talked about the structure and the partnership agreement, and the partnership agreement seems some way off. And the programmes aren't due to open until the new year. I guess the question is why should universities be doing work now?
Well, two reasons. One, the new operations and activities which will come forward take time to develop. Yeah. Now's the time that they should be developing, you know, getting what I call the ducks in the row on each individual activity. Yeah. But also, and importantly, as I said, these new committees, their first task will be to draft these implementation plans. Yeah. And universities need to be part of that process. Yeah. You know, they can't own it, they can't drive it individually. No. It's that old partnership way of working. But they need to be, you know, if not having the pen, but, you know, ensuring that the pen's saying the right things. Yeah. And, you know, and identifying a consensus with different people around the table who've got different views on different priorities. Yeah. But now's the time to do that. Yeah. And, you know, if your particular university in the local area feels as if they're not really part of that and feel a partnership ownership of that, then now's the time to really get on with that. Yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise we'll end up with an annual implementation plan at a local level which doesn't meet your strategic objectives. Yeah. So now's the time. Don't wait for
the ink to dry.
No, don't wait for the ink to dry.
Yeah. Brilliant, that's great. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
That's been a good catch-up on where we are.
Yeah, well, we're going to meet again to have another catch-up shortly.
Very shortly, probably.
Very shortly, I imagine, yes. So my thanks go to Kevin for helping with that update. We will put our contact details on YouTube when this is broadcast, so if you have any particular comments about what we said or any questions, please follow up with the UK Innovation and Growth team, and we'll be back in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you.